I'm Adam Larson, and welcome back to Count Me In, the podcast by and for management accountants. Today's guest comes to us from the forefront of the data automation revolution. Anthony Nitsos, a proud CMA, a consulting CFO, and the founder of SaaS Gurus, shares the unique story of how he transitioned from pursuing a career in medicine to how he discovered the power and beauty of accounting. From explaining how accounting forms the spinal column of any manufacturing business, to practical advice for riding the coming tidal wave of financial automation, Anthony's insight and expertise is important listening for management accountants everywhere. Enjoy the show. Anthony, thank you so much for coming on the podcast today. We're really excited to have you on. And today we're going to be focusing in on automation and what that means for the management accountant. But to start off, I wanted you to kind of tell us a little bit about your story.
So I thank you, Adam, for that, and I really appreciate being on your program today. I've had an association with the IMA for a long time, which we uncovered in our kind of a preliminary, so that'll be part of the story. But I actually started off in medicine, of all things. I was accepted into an accelerated program at the University of Michigan at the age of 18, but several years into it, I realized I really did not want to be a doctor. So it was one of those kind of, all right, well, you're most of the way to a doctor and you've kind of got a bachelor's degree to show up for, but what are you going to do with your life now if you've decided not to go in medicine? So I think by, stint of the fact that they both started with M, I went into manufacturing right after medicine. I don't know if it was anything more than that, just like, okay, I need a job. I need to, make money. But the strange thing is what they had me do was really, kind of the beginnings of process reengineering analysis and trying to figure out why, in this particular case, logistics were breaking down, material wasn't ending up where it went. So I got kind of a baptism in fire. What it showed me was that corporations are very similar to bodies. They even, means the same thing. So that this training that I got in medicine actually translated pretty well into manufacturing. And so from there I took off. After that, I did a stint where I was doing a lot of ERP implementations. If folks recall, back around the year 1997, everybody started panicking that their code would blow up when the year 2000 showed up. So there was this huge, Y2K, doomsday disasters, et cetera, et cetera. And at that time, I was picking up accounting skills. It was one of those things where it was pretty clear that the impact of manufacturing was absolutely a financial one, in that, when you got right down to it, you're making decisions on the shop floor that impact profitability. So it was kind of a natural progression for me to just kind of move over into more of an accounting type of world. And ERP really brought that together, because that's where you really unify back then, still and today, the operations of the company with finance. And so that's where the accounting piece came into it. And it was right around 1996 where I actually got my first certification in accounting, and it was the CMA. And I remember that being really useful to me, and still to this day. I'm not going to say it really stopped being useful, because whereas the CPA exam, and I've taken that, and I've also passed that. I'm also a CPA, but I became a CPA later. I was a CMA first because CMA was very broad based. And from my training, you can't look at one part of a body any more than you can look at one part of a corporation. It's an integrated systemic whole. And so how those pieces work together and how they work most efficiently together, the principles are very similar between medicine and, process reengineering. They really are. You go after the root cause. The idea of medicine is not to treat symptoms. I know there's a big debate about that, but really what we are trained to do is find the root cause and fix it. And manufacturing is no different. And neither is IT. So moving from the physical body to the physical manufacturing, now to a more, electronic realm, bringing ERP and all the systems and how they touch everybody together, and unifying that ultimately in a framework which was based in accounting in my mind, because in my mind, the accounting piece is like the spinal column of the body. You really build everything off of that. All of your reporting, all of your metrics comes off of that. And so focusing the attention to get to the numbers most accurately, most efficiently, really became kind of the focus of my next position, which was a controller for a Japanese company. It was a company that was a manufacturing company that had been purchased by It was an English company that had been purchased by the Japanese, excuse me. And the president at the time really wanted to have his own money guy rather than have somebody from Japan come in and do the numbers. And so he quickly moved to hire a new controller, and that was me. And so at that point, we knew we were going to scale the company 10 times within the next 3 years. And so my experience in accounting, the fact that I also spoke Japanese because I had actually studied there, um, helped out. I understood the cultural became kind of like the cultural liaison with the Japanese people when they showed up and then going over there. But that was kind of a side issue. The big issue was they gave me opportunity in a greenfield implementation to design the entire data collection, information reporting, financial reporting, and whatnot for what was going to be a $50 million company that I had inherited at 5 million using Peachtree. So here I am, freshly minted CMA, got his first controller job, applying all these skills and saying, okay, we now get to design a data collection piece for all the production data, all the manufacturing data, all the material data, all the labor, blah, 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 in a way where we really kept the cost down. So this was my first and in some ways best experience scaling a company because I was actually given that power. I was given the authority to basically design the system. And so we had, at the time when we started that 5 million, there was myself, a full-time accountant, and kind of a half-time payroll person running, the entire back office. When we reached 50 million, I had the same 3 people, only the payroll person was now full-time. And so we were able to, by applying Japanese manufacturing principles and techniques of total quality management, plus Six Sigma black belt process reengineering analysis, plus my training in ERP systems and what could be done. And at that point, the state of automation was you drove everything off of barcode scanners. And so once everything was set up easily, so each person had their own badge, their own employee badge. That was what they used to swipe in and out of the clocks, and also what they were used to swipe in and out of jobs. And we made it easy for them to do that. We had readers everywhere. And the jobs themselves had their own codes. And so all you had to do is just match the two up in a system, and boom, out falls the data. So it was the principle of a single point of data entry, which was the scanners. Poka-yoke, which in Japanese basically means idiot proof, makes it foolproof. So you can't make a mistake. So there's no typing in of job numbers. There's no typing in of labor numbers. It's all being scanned, right? And so by being able to do that, you could then control literally every piece of data coming into the system in a high quality manner that easily attained Six Sigma and beyond in terms of accuracy. And basically made lives easier so that data was producible and allowed the organization to scale, because you can now, all you're doing is just turning up the volume to 11 on a system that's able to handle it. And so kind of in a journey that's where I ended up in the early 2000s, is at that point in my life, is having achieved, this level of, automation and sophistication in a very real world sample.
That's quite a story. And the fact that 20 years ago that level of automation you were able to accomplish, and now fast forward to now, automation is everything. People are talking about it. They're talking about RPA. They're talking about AI coming and doing all these things and helping out the finance function. Has anything really changed from automation in 20 years ago to now? The fact that since you've been doing it for so long, what has changed, and has it changed really, or what is the same?
Well, okay, so it has changed, and it is also the same. It's the same, I think, from basic principles, right?
Mm-hmm.
The basic principle of a single point of data entry. Data creation is the point of greatest impact of quality.
Yeah.
So you get the data in right the first time. That principle hasn't changed. Going to, applying, the hierarchy of controls where prevention comes before detection, comes before correction, and keeping that firmly in mind when you're designing that. You can take basically a system in manufacturing. Six Sigma at the time was considered to be state of the art. You had quality at, 99.99966%, whatever it was. That was the 3 sigmas off the mean, so basically 3 parts per million. Well, in a computer system, there's no such thing as 3 parts per million failure. If we had a 3 parts per million failure in a computer system, there would be havoc, all right? It would be chaos.
Yeah.
In a computer system, it's effectively 100%. So you go from 6 sigma to infinite sigma, if you will. And that's a level of quality that you simply can't attain in a manufacturing, in a real world setting, not yet with our current state of technology. There's science fiction about how that, nanotechnology might change all that, but we're not there yet. But in a computer system, you can make it pretty damn well 100% accurate. And from a quality control standpoint, you're not applying the principles differently. You're going from single point of data entry, make it correct up front. So preventive type of mechanism. So you idiot proof it, you poka-yoke it. And voila, you end up with systems that are now much faster at taking in vast amounts more of data. But what you do with it is now the different part, right? And the methods that the data are delivered are different. In 20 years ago, having an on-premise solution of your own servers with your own installed ERP system that you paid a license for one time, and then maybe you had an ongoing maintenance agreement, but the software was yours effectively. We are now in a different world. Well, different only in probably, I think, methodology, but not in what I call paradigm or basics. Okay, so the server is now called Amazon Web Server or Azure or whatever you happen to be using, but there's still a box sitting somewhere that's crunching numbers. It's just not yours anymore. All right. So, and then the application in this case, you're not buying you're not buying a license to, JD Edwards or Bond or whatever it is. You're now subscribing to NetSuite and Intact, and you're paying an ongoing, fee for that. Well, that's still software. Only where it's really paid off, of course, is that your own organization doesn't have a huge IT bloated infrastructure to support all that on-premise type of activity. So in terms of, again, that just makes things more productive. I now, just how it's impacted me as a, a fractional CFO, if you will, a finance expert and a process re-engineer, is I can serve 30 or 40 clients from my desktop directly, right? And as I multiply that with the other people in my organization, that reaches many more. But in terms of, let's say, my direct clients that I deal with, I can easily handle 30. Well, that's only because I can access every one of their accounting systems online at will, easily. Data is immediately available. That everything is structured in a way to make it efficient. So, the way you put the tools together now is the same way, right? Back then, we were using barcode scanners, using barcodes, collecting over, network hardwire into a server that was then, step all the way through it. Those steps are effectively the same. Mm-hmm. But it's now you have more flexibility in what you can plug and play together. So that's changed. So the breadth of things that are available to us as, financial professionals, and accounting professionals is much broader and richer than, we had Peachtree and QuickBooks. That was pretty much it. Or you spent $5 million to go to an ERP system because you had to buy this huge, IT. So there was like this tiny little piece that everybody kind of fought and made things work in. And then there was this huge leap up. Well, there's nothing in that middle real estate. Well, there's a lot of stuff in that middle real estate now. So it makes available to, another thing that's changed is the size of the companies now that can access these kinds of automation tools is much smaller than it was in the past. We were a large-ish manufacturing company, a conglomerate. We were one plant of like 20 in North America and then worldwide, 1,500, right? So we had capital available to us. So we could buy these systems, even though we were too small for it. But back then, a company that was $5 million in revenue on its own, good luck trying to get the money to, invest in something like that. Today, I can go subscribe to QuickBooks. I can subscribe to HubSpot or Nutshell if I want a really cheaper version. I can go out and there's so much available in what we call the SMB, the small and medium business market, available to us that now it's kind of taking the know-how of putting those together in a way that's most efficient for, let's say, an industry. And that's where we focus our attention. We're very focused on SaaS companies and setting up their infrastructure, using all these tools and all this past practice to come up with a really, even today, the most efficient way of delivering numbers. So the goal's not any different in turning raw data into useful information, right? That's what we do as management accountants. That is our primary function in life, is to translate, what's happening in the real world into something that makes sense for executives on a financial basis. Let's say it's all, it's about the money, right?
Mm-hmm.
But mixed dashboards too. And that's where the breadth of the IMA education, comes into it. The CMA education is that you're across multiple areas of the organization looking at the whole thing systemically. And that's what it takes to put data systems together. Now, to the point of AI and where this all fits in machine learning, even now, QuickBooks is, first we started off with rules, right? Where you could classify transactions as they came in using rules. Now it suggests rules. And if you turn on their more advanced feature, it will actually just do it for you, create the rules, and then, you can go in and check later. So they're evolving their machine learning capabilities inside of the accounting system. Accounting in particular, is a very rules-based, practice, right? We have GAAP, we have, practices of ways of doing things. And it's also, very structured, right? Because it's structured around this chart of accounts thing, which goes back 5 centuries. So it's a pretty robust system if it's lasted that long, right? Well, that also means it's subject to machine learning, because anything that can be really systematized, that's structured, can then be replaced by faster, what are called heuristic self-learning systems. And that's what these things are. So whether you call them machine learning, ML, or AI, what it is as it has been all along, computers doing things faster than people. And the faster is now changing into not just the repetitive tasks, but the non-repetitive stuff.
Yeah.
Oxford University, I think it was, or it was one of the major universities in England, and I can't remember, but Oxford is the one that sticks in my mind, did a study back, and this was in 2005, 2006, if I recall. And they were taking trends of automation at the time and applying, various analyses to different industries, and said, by the year 2050, this was the headline, by the year 2050, half of all jobs in the US would be automated out of existence. But if you read the paper, they were actually, they weren't being alarmist about it. They're just saying, look, that's not to say they won't be replaced by something else. But right now, based on automation trends, these jobs are likely to be automated out of existence, and humans won't do them. When you go back to my example of automating the greenfield manufacturing, we were doing everything by barcode scanner. Well, in the past, there would be people writing numbers on things, right? So you're just replacing people. And that's what the power of SaaS is nowadays, and all of this is that ultimately what you're doing is you're replacing people with tools that can do the jobs that they did for lower cost. And so you're trading off people and their jobs, this is the human element, for automation. So the drive to, increase profits, to gain market share, to gain efficiency is all driven ultimately by, in many ways, lowering cost and increasing sales. What we do on the IMA side, the CMA side of things, is we control that cost piece. We're not really, we're out there selling. We didn't go into sales. That's why we're in accounting and finance, right? And so the long and short of it is, you can use these tools, but, keep in mind that what you're doing is you are automating out of existence, somebody's job. And in the top 10 jobs in this study, accounting was like number 7 at threat for automation. And it makes total sense. It's a very structured, yes, I know GAAP opens up, alternatives, but, an AI ultimately can be, if an AI can be taught how to beat the world's champions at chess, I think it probably can be taught to figure out what the, the best GAAP solution is for a particular circumstance. How close are we to that? I don't know. I mean, it's probably it's probably not as far away as we'd like to think to be comfortable.
Mm-hmm. Definitely.
Yeah, I think it's coming, in that as accountants, we should be aware of the fact that we've got kind of a choice. We can ride that tidal wave, or we can be, drowned underneath it, but the tidal wave is going to come.
Yeah, it definitely is. With, the rise of, and I'll say software as a service, or SaaS, as you've been referring to it, it's definitely taken over. And I know that there's been lots of papers written and then lots of articles and the things you've mentioned about how that it is taking away jobs. But there are big issues coming for the accounting and finance team as we do go to things like SaaS softwares and programs to help automate our systems. It makes us become more efficient, and as long as the data going into that is accurate, all the rest of the stuff should be accurate. So what can the accounting and finance do? What are the issues that they are facing as they go into this world of trying to ride the wave instead of being drowned under it?
Well, it's first of all, you need to learn how to swim, right? To extend the analogy, and in this case means you need to get up to speed and up to date on what is out there. And there are a lot of resources out there to tell you, what's the best. So that's kind of number one. Number two, and this has been something that I liked about the messaging of the IMA, and still do to this day, is that there isn't really a decision anywhere in the organization that doesn't have a financial impact. Therefore, we can legitimately look outside of our areas for opportunities to save the bottom line. And that could be finding a tool. So I would rather be the one out there finding the tools than somebody finding them and replacing me with a tool they found. So number one is to learn how to swim. Number two is to swim. You've got to be moving forward. If you think that let's say you're in an organization that's been doing the same things over and over again and it's resistant to change. Well, it could be that your organization itself is at threat, because any organization that doesn't adapt to changing environmental circumstances is, a Darwinian evolution. If you don't adapt, you basically don't survive. And the world is changing. So to me, it's, learn what's out there. They're available tools. You can just start with a Google search, like automation tools for accounting, and just start reading. It'll come at you. It's not difficult. It's scary is what it is. I mean, it's frightening to think about the fact that the livelihood that you've been relying on for years might be at threat of being automated. The reality is that step isn't too far off of reality, or that view isn't too far off of reality. And so you should be reacting accordingly. And with anything that involves, say, a threat to your financial security, or, whatnot, or a risk to your financial security, we got to mitigate it. And that means learning. That means opening yourself up to new ways of doing things, even if it seems really strange and radical. Here's an example. This one I went through was a great experience for me. So I came from the world of Microsoft, right? Everybody in accounting, all of it in accounting is on Windows machines. It's like, that's just the way it is. It's Excel, it's QuickBooks on, for Windows, it's, Outlook, it's, all that stuff, Word, etc. Then there's this whole other universe out there that's called G Suite, which does all the same things. And so what happened is I'd been doing fractional accounting, financial controller, CFO work since about 2006. That's when I went independent, actually partnered up with somebody. I've been doing that mostly since, except there was a period of 4 years in there where I was actually an employee. And I went back to being employed because it was my second scaling opportunity. And this time was now how to scale an organization 10 times revenue in 3 years. But instead of being manufacturing, it was software. And there was no way I was in charge of everything, because I was coming into a system that was already set up. It was basically, how do you fix the mess that's already there? But in that particular period of time, that's where the learning how to adapt existing systems, and suddenly what's out there was this G thing. And they said, oh, you don't have a Windows machine, here's your MacBook. Oh, and by the way, we don't do any Microsoft products here at all. We're a security company. The security is too weak, right? I went to work for a cybersecurity company, right? So the CFO hired me to build his entire back office, which was what I had done before. Only instead of doing it fractional, I basically needed to become, salaried again, because this was a full-time gig. And we did it. In 3.5 years, we scaled the company from 13 to 130 million in revenue. And we did it just basically by having a great product, but it was security. So they gave me this MacBook and said, you don't get Outlook, you don't get Office anymore. That doesn't exist here. Here's your G Suite account. And I was like, what? I mean, I was like, oh my God. But after 3 months, I had so come totally around. So here's where, I'm using an example. I was afraid to learn a new system, even though it was incumbent on the job that I came in. So it's all right, well, you're going to have to learn this. You can hate it or you can learn it and learn it. I did. And I learned to love it. And not because I had to learn to love it, because it was better. And it was better because where Microsoft had created all these silo products before and was trying to knit them together in a, kind of an internet-based, cloud-based environment. G Suite from the beginning was designed that way. And so as a collaboration tool, it is far superior to anything that Teams or One SharePoint or whatever can offer. And so that's why most of the tech companies I work with now are now G Suite houses. I have one or two that are Outlook. And because it knits together so easily, that's why I can serve those 30 clients. They're all on G. And so the ability to collaborate multiplicatively has greatly increased. Why? Because I learned how to swim. I was thrown in the water. I had no choice. But now I really embrace it. And we're on the lookout constantly. So maybe you've heard of Bill.com. You have folks using Bill.com or Expensify or Concur. There's a system out there now that knits all that together that's free and comes with a corporate credit card. And suddenly your automation increases dramatically and your costs go down. But you're going to replace anybody who's managing the Expensify instance. And you're going to cut down on the people who are modifying, and using the Bill.com instance. You have to be willing to face those kinds of choices. Again, the human element. Accounting is not numbers, it's also people, and there are people behind it. And that goes all the way back to my medical training. These are human beings, and first and foremost, all along, every organization is composed of us, and having a good, fun job to do, and not worrying about the, headsman's axe is something that we want. But you have to be aware that you are in an industry right now that is subject to automation. And you should be learning how to embrace and use those tools, not resist it.
This has been Count Me In, IMA's podcast, providing you with the latest perspectives of thought leaders from the accounting and finance profession. If you like what you heard and you'd like to be counted in for more relevant accounting and finance education, visit IMA's website at www.imanet.org.